Hello, I'm Chuck Fall. This is the president of Truth Action Project, also known as TAP, and I will be your host tonight, co-hosting with Trina Silvers. So welcome to our Campfire chat. This is a follow-up of our Tuesday forum themed on Gaza and the Palestinian-Israel conflict, America's funding of false flags, endless wars and ethnic cleansing. And tonight is our guests. On Tuesday were Alison, Weir, Richard Gage, and John Spritzler. And we went very long, and that's on our Rumble channel. You can find it to get the full presentations. We are going to debrief on the themes and the topics and the information that was presented. Just for some housekeeping, please keep your mic muted. And what we're going to do here tonight is basically use the hand signal or enter into the chat that you would like to speak. We're kind of thinking, 2 to 3 minutes. Depending on how many people, if we don't have a large group and a lot of interest, we certainly will let the clock run. But we do want to get as many voices expressed and heard tonight as possible. And so we'll be passing the talking stick, as it were. So 2, 3, 4 minute windows and make your point as well as you can. Social media. I want to say that we appreciate it when you like and share from our channels and subscribe and amplify TAP projects on our social media. Please do that. And as a disclaimer, the views that are presented tonight are not TAP's viewpoints. It's the viewpoints of the presenters. We are just creating a space to explore ideas in the truth world, as it were. So the material that's presented is for information and educational purposes. Oopsie, let me turn that off. Excuse me. And the Truth Action Project name and all its form and abbreviations are the property of its owners, and its use does not imply endorsement or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service. But before we get underway, we want to emphasize that TAP is a networking community hub for truth seekers. And we want to build partnerships, and we aim to support organizations, not just for 9/11 truth, but the truth around medical freedom, resisting the WHO power grab, among other struggles. And tonight we're talking about the problem of the military-industrial complex and the forever wars that are now showing up in the Gaza. For example, TAP strives to give thought leaders fiscal and media support by way of TAP platforms to showcase their work, exposing the big lies and aims. And we aim to inspire and promote action by the truth advocates who support them and their efforts. TAP is a bridge that can connect us all, and there is strength in numbers. When we bring the greatest minds together, we can come up with solutions and goals that can make all of our combined efforts effective and powerful. But in order to provide the technical and media support our partners and others require, we need your help in building a team to advance respectful dialogue and working with creative thinkers, writers, forum hosts to develop TAP media projects. And so we welcome volunteers. And if you have an area of interest and a niche special skill that you think could apply to TAP, please contact us. And we have a donate button as well and accept contributions. And so that is our introductions. I'm going to start us out. And if people, I'm going to just start us out by sharing a memo that was left at our YouTube channel. And this was an individual who attended, and I don't know the name. It has an email handle, but this individual writes, he says, he or she, I came here on Tuesday forum. I came here in hope that specifically Richard Gage would shed some more light and give specific information on Israel's suspicious bad defense and eventual deliberate stand-down operation that made the Hamas October 7th attack possible. But what I got was instead more of a general view on false flag attacks, which I agree upon, and 9/11 was an obvious one of those. But for the rest, this was a one-sided lecture about how bad Israel Zionism is and how sorry we should all feel for the Palestinians. Not a word about the whole Palestine-Hamas-Gaza project has turned into an Iranian proxy warrior death cult orchestrated by billionaires from Qatar, and all the impossibilities that bring to the process of a peaceful solution for the area. Not a word about the hundreds of thousands of Jews driven out of Arab nations in the Middle East and North Africa, which all once were conquered and established by the sword. And let me just finish up that remark there. Oopsie, I'm sorry. There it is. I lost my text. Okay, so not a word. Oops, getting a little buggy thing here. So I'm going to not a word about the hundreds of thousands of Jews driven out of the Middle East and North Africa. The Middle East is which were all conquered and established by the sword after World War II. The Middle East is a big mess of bad actors from many different sources behind the scenes. To be one-sided in the judgment of the developments there isn't helping anyone, whichever side you choose to support. Okay, so I am, that's the introduction. And I'm going to take the spotlight off of myself and open this up. And so right off, John Spritzler is back from the forum. I appreciate that. Let's just go straight. We have hands up. John, Henry, and Claudio, and I'll look for the chat. I'm going to put the spotlight on you. John, you can respond to the message that was left. But let's go to John Spritzler. Go for it, John.
Well, the person that you were just quoting is saying that it was all one-sided on Tuesday night, all pro-Palestinian, all about how bad Zionism is, with no discussion about the suffering of Jews. Well, he must not have listened to the whole show. I was the last of the three speakers. 90% of what I talked about was the suffering of ordinary Jews in Europe during World War II and in Israel currently, the Israeli working class suffering at the hands of the Israeli government. So I don't know what show he was listening to, but it wasn't ours.
Well, so to be fair, and I'll take the spotlight off, he was responding to Richard Gage's report, which is fine. We don't need to unpack, but let's just, your kind of challenge and objection is noted. And so there are going to be many points of view on the Israeli Palestine situation. Let's just keep hearing from others. Can we go to Henry and then Claudio? Henry, can you unmute?
I'm unmuted. Thank you for this TAP organization that you're trying to create, Charles. It's great.
Yes.
I did not see the Tuesday night. I wasn't a participant on Tuesday night, so I have ignorance about what John said or whatever. But I would ask the person making that comment, did Palestinians invade Poland and throw out 3/4 of the population there to create a Muslim state? And of course, that's just a play question, because the answer is of course not. What happened was that European Jews came in to the Middle East, threw out 3/4 of the population of Muslims and Christians in Palestine, and they created via force, via leverage for the mighty powers that existed at the time and still do, violence, incredible terrorist attacks Deir Yassin stands out, Tantura stands out, but it was a project to ethnically cleanse Palestine of non-Jews so the Jews could have a mythical homeland. And so if this person's going to whine about 100,000 Jews being, I mean, that's just a game of what if or what about this and what about that, and I don't play that game. I look at the situation and I see a peaceful solution, it's time that Jews need to take a look in the mirror and say, hey, we're guilty, been guilty for 80 years.
Well, and I'm going to take, what is the peace prospects? Do you see possibilities for peace, and what would be required for that? I am interested in that question.
I think it's very simple. Jews either leave Palestine or consent to live under Palestinian rule. Perhaps Palestinians want to choose Muslim rule. Perhaps they want a democracy. It's not up to me, or I don't think anybody here, how Palestinians want to be ruled. But as far as Jewish supremacists going over there, or this diabolical one-state solution, which forces the rape victim to live with her rapist after 80 years of violence and rape and encroachment and encampments and occupation and all this stuff. It doesn't make any sense. The peaceful solution is to have Jews leave or consent to live under Palestinian rule.
All right. Let's share these ideas around. Let's go to Claudio and then Felipe. Claudio, you're going to unmute. I'm going to put the spotlight on you, and we're going to turn the timer on. We're looking 3-4 minutes, maybe. What are your thoughts quickly, Claudio?
Okay, I'm going to make it 5 minutes.
Oh boy.
Well, hello, everybody. I had to write down. There's always a critic. There's always somebody that has something to say about anything. Doesn't matter what it is. Number one, control the narrative. Steer us in another direction. Very common, especially on social media. With you present something important, and then they want to steer people away from it, and then create an argument, and then so people completely forget about the topic at hand, and or just muddy the waters on that particular topic, so people kind of don't focus on the key points. It's like I said, people tend to, there's the obvious, right? Like 9/11 was an inside job, and just for that one thing, we should all be rallying around that, that cause. And Palestine, with the guests from the last event, I mean, my God, you called it an encyclopedic presentations, from each one of them.
Yes.
And they should all have separate events, by the way. I got a lot of comments regarding that. I spoke to somebody just a little while ago. He said that. And regarding Richard Gage, he only had so much time. I mean, to do his presentation. You had these 3 dynamic guests, and they all had so much time. There's only so much that he could cover. So he could not, do the full presentation. And let me see, hopefully that particular critic will come on to this event right now. And so we can hear him, or her live.
Absolutely.
So we can all address it if they have the cojones,
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's go to Felipe. Let's hear from people. And Felipe, I'm going to put the spotlight on you. We haven't met before, have we?
No. I was at the presentation on Tuesday.
Oh, good.
Very, very interesting. I had already watched videos and tried to educate myself on the conflict, and it's clear to me that Hamas has always worked for Israel. It was even created by Israel. and now is an instrument of Israel that has primarily two roles. One is to persuade or indoctrinate Palestinians that they need to hate the regular Jewish people. And they make no difference between regular Jewish people and their leaderships / Zionists. And that's one role. And the other role is to play this fabricated attacks on Israel so that Israel then can claim victim and counterattack. And that counterattack, they take over land, they massacre people. It's horrific. And all we have to do is look at the different maps at different stages since Israel was first created until now, and how Israel has taken over more and more and more land purely based on being a victim, claiming the false right that they have the right to defend themselves. And when they are the ones perpetrating attacks on their own people, on their own land, like the one on October 7th, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket science degree to realize how fake that was. That was insane. Even if the media doesn't tell us anything, there's plenty of videos, and I've seen videos, including videos from Hamas, as they were entering and blowing up the fences and the barricades to enter Israel with absolutely no resistance. And then there were testimonies by the Israeli soldiers that are normally placed in that location in the border, and how they say that this is ridiculous. This is, it was a complete setup. It was totally fake. That would never happen. We're talking about 400 people with pickup trucks. I mean, the artillery and the sensors and all the technology that Israel has at the border would have wiped them out in a second. So for those people with just handguns and pickup trucks to blow up that fence or a barricade, whatever it is, and enter Israel and kidnap people and kill people, it has to be fabricated. It's not realistic at all. But anyway, to me, that's how I see the picture. And I am very new to this. A month ago, I didn't know anything about this whole conflict. But it's the first thing that comes to mind. I see it very obvious. And then behind the leadership of Israel is the globalist elite, 100%, the Zionists, who control Israel, who control the European Union, who control the financial markets all over the world, and definitely United States. So,
Felipe, thank you for that. May I ask real quick where you're from, what country you're joining us?
Argentina.
Where?
Argentina.
Thank you very much for coming tonight for your input.
It's good. I think just sharing out and getting people to kind of share their observations and the things that are, right on the floor of your mind right now. Please share. We're going to go to Fern and unmute. Please go ahead, Fern.
Hi, friends. My name is Fern. And I came into, I had no aware of my own history, and I came into learning about it in the 1980s. I went into the Green Party because of political crimes that I had no idea of my family, and I had no idea of my own history and how my family properties in 1967 were used to fund the Israeli Six-Day War, and I had no idea of my history. And Ralph Nader was amazing. He taught me a lot about corporate crime and the media, how it was supported by real estate investors. And he talked about oil and all that stuff. And then we had a very active group. And 9/11 happened, and I found Les Jameson, and we started a 9/11 Truth Group. I remember Wally Rodriguez was there with his lawyers because they saw explosives go off in the basement, and we stayed. Then we moved to a church on 8th Street, and Frank Morales, and he would, and then Richard Gage came, and so I came in the beginning of 9/11. I want to say I went to Ground Zero today. It's very related to what's going on. It's horrible. It's about privatizations, and it's based on blacks. Like the whole thing is based on these horrible black people who how they created the 7 wars, all about black history, and the whole thing of Ground Zero is based on these horrible people from foreign countries. Anyhow, like after 9/11, there was the Patriot Act, there was Homeland Security, again based on make-believe terrorists. There was Hurricane Katrina, which took the black people out of their homes and took their schools. There was the tsunami. There was the London Transit bombings. This thing with everything's privatized today. Like they're trying to privatize everything. They're going against the USA Constitution, which is about free speech and about separation between state and religion. And then there was
Can you wrap it up for us, please? So we can keep moving around the room. You can come back and do another round if you'd like, another share again.
It goes on, but it's all about...
It does. It's crazy.
And the people need to know. We need to have a voice. There are like 21 people here. This is something global. So thank you for letting me share.
That's a great point. That was a great close.
So I put my hand up, and I'm just going to share a reflection on the comment that was left at our YouTube channel. And Richard didn't get to spend the time of his 21 themes or chapters. And one of them was the 10/7 9/11 comparison. The obvious parallel is, as NORAD was confused by war games and didn't know really what was going on and was kind of designed to not be functioning, then so did the Israelis stand down. And absolutely, the 10/7 event was, I'm convinced from what I've seen, a let it happen. Yes, Israel has basically purchased Hamas and financed them and created what John Spritzler emphasizes as the boogeyman to rationalize these forever wars. And I think people in the truth community understand that that 10/7 was contrived, and many of these wars since 9/11 have been effectively contrived events. And there's the whole theory of the neocon and the Project for New American Century. So, and one of the things we've talked about is, what are the young people who protest? What can we in the movement, kind of help them with, as it were? And I think the extent of the protest is a ceasefire, a divestment, but there is not a criticism of the power elite, of the billionaire class. There is not a recognition of this history that Richard Gage, articulates very well. And the Zionist project is one of these, clearly it's an imperial project to insinuate this battleship, as it were, in the Middle East. I think that's pretty clear. And I guess one question I would have for the historians is the exodus or the diaspora of the North African Jews and the Iranian Jews and the Middle Eastern Jews, I assume, was triggered by the creation of Israel in 1948. And I think that it's the dynamic of the Israeli establishment. Had repercussions all around, and we are witnessing a modern day trail of tears in Gaza right now. So we do want to be able to speak to, what do we say? How do we answer this? And it's interesting, this question about a single state versus two state. If it's single state, then it's going to be Palestinian state, as we heard tonight, and so on. Who knows? So these are interesting questions. What would a peace look like, and if we subscribe to principles of freedom? And maybe John Spritzler, we'd get the baton back to him, the talking stick, as it were, and we could talk and explore, a peace that is expression of freedom and not a peace that continues the domination by the billionaire military class. Okay, Felipe has his hand up. Can unmute.
A question and a comment. First, the question, as I read the Bible, especially the section that deals with the Acts of the Apostles, where they go out and preach the word of God to the Jewish, it clearly seems to me that Jewish, Christians, Muslims, and Arabs live perfectly fine in peace in all that region. I'm talking about regular people. And right. It looks like they have lived together for years. They have shared the same land for millennia, or thousands of years. So it's not that the Arab culture could not tolerate Jewish people. And this happens in Syria. This happens all over the place. We saw it in the Syrian invasion by the United States during the Obama administration, how all those Jewish, Christians, Muslims lived together, and they all united to fight against the Americans, actually. But it's not like the conflict in Iraq, where you have Shiites and Sunnis fighting each other. That does not happen in Palestine. It doesn't happen in Syria. It doesn't happen in Lebanon. So it's a lie that's been sold to us. And this is my question. Is it a lie that's been sold to us in order to justify the imposition of a new country called Israel, when it's a religion? It's not a political country. It does not need a country. So that is that used as an excuse, the fact that the lie that Judaism cannot coexist with Christianity and Muslim and Islam, and so that's an impression that I have. So I put it as a question because maybe I'm completely wrong, but that's the impression that I've always had.
Let's go to John Spritzler. That's good, Felipe. That's a good question. John, what do you I'm going to put you on the spotlight. Unmute. Something's going on. We have to ask you to unmute, John.
Am I?
Yes, we hear you. We hear you.
Okay. I agree with what Felipe just said about ordinary people, regardless of their religion, when left to themselves, when there's no oppressive elite manipulating them to fear each other, they get along fine. And history shows that. And the whole purpose of Zionist violence against Palestinians is to make Israeli Jews fear Palestinians, and fearing and hating are basically the same emotion. And the purpose of that is because the Israeli billionaire ruling class, and that's what it is, it's a billionaire ruling class, just like in the United States, it has to control the mainly Jewish working class in Israel that it oppresses and gets rich off of. It has to control them. If they are not controlled, they would remove the rich from power and make society truly equal and democratic, and one where Jews and Palestinians were getting along with each other. So they have to be controlled in order to be oppressed and exploited. And the way the Israeli billionaire ruling class controls the Israeli Jewish population is by making it seem that the Israeli ruling class is their protector against their real enemy, Palestinians. And this is exactly how Netanyahu killed the enormous Israeli working class uprising in 2011 that had the support of 90% of the Israeli general population, according to newspaper opinion polls. That was an uprising against the Israeli upper class ruling class against economic oppression, with demands about ending economic oppression in various ways. Netanyahu killed that movement, so it did not win any of its demands, despite the 450,000 people demonstrating with 90% support from the public. It did not win any of its demands because Netanyahu said that they had to stop their demonstrating against the government, because the government was what was protecting them against their real enemy. And because the boogeyman of Palestinian boogeyman has been made so effectively frightening, this Netanyahu succeeded with this demand. So I would just like to underscore that the purpose of a boogeyman enemy isn't just to be a pretext for foreign invasions. The communism was the boogeyman enemy during the Cold War. The United States never invaded Russia or the Soviet Union. It used the communist boogeyman enemy as a pretext to make Americans think that they had to put up with, however grudgingly, enormous economic inequality, with the military-industrial complex taking all the wealth that should have gone for schools and hospitals and better life for ordinary people. And so it's used to control and oppress your own people. That's its main purpose. And by the way, the United States armed the Soviet Union all during the Cold War. I proved this in articles that are online. It armed the Soviet Union all during the Cold War because it needed the Soviet Union to be a frightening boogeyman enemy. And Gorbachev famously told the American President Bush, I think senior, when he ended the Soviet Union, he said, "We're doing you a big disservice. We're eliminating your boogeyman enemy." And that also, I've got recordings of that in his own, online. This is a fact. This is how boogeyman enemies work. And the thing is, I'm going to stop in 1 second, but the anti-Zionist movement does not explain this. The anti-Zionist movement does not explain that Zionism is a way for billionaires to oppress not only Palestinians, which is obvious, but the Israeli working class also economically. And because of that, the Zionist framework is unchallenged. The Zionist framework says that, to Americans, well, you've got two choices. You can either support Israel because Israel is using violence against Palestinians for the noble purpose of making Jews safe, or you can say, well, I oppose that violence, even though I agree it's for the noble purpose of making Jews safe. When it's framed that way, you get what we in fact have. You get a majority of the American public supporting Israel because they think you have to do that to be on the side of Jews, and sympathy for the horror of the Holocaust is what motivates that. And you get a minority, a substantial minority, who will say, well, even though what Israel does is to make Jews safe, I still oppose it. And you get a substantial minority who say that. But what you don't get is, and what you could and should get if you explain the true purpose of Zionism, which is not to protect Jews at all, but to oppress them, you would, if you did that, then you would have the vast majority of Americans saying, I oppose Israel's violence against Palestinians because I know it has absolutely nothing to do with making Jews safe. Never did and never does.
Thank you, John. And I'll just and we're going to go to Henry, and I'll just make an observation as a truther. And I know not everyone's critical of the COVID program, but the Israeli people, 80% of the Israeli state, in effect, turned the people over to Pfizer. I mean, so, talk about a captive audience and talking about a state using its people as a kind of fodder, and whether it's the COVID program or whether it's war, this is what we're contending with. And I think so let's go to Henry. If you would take unmute, and I'll put the spotlight on you. And what do you think?
Well, I wanted to go back to Felipe's question because he said some things that need clarification. One thing he said was Jews and Muslims and Christians lived peacefully in the land, and though that's true, those were not the Ashkenazi Jews, the European Jews. The Mizrahi and the I'm blanking on the other sect of Judaism that was there, and so that's kind of a red herring argument that Jews and Muslims live together, because Ashkenazi Jews never lived peacefully with their Christian and their Muslim populations that they were living with, or invading, I should say. The little known, I mean, many people think they want to separate Zionism from Judaism, and the issue was discussed very professionally in 1942, where over 800 rabbis signed a document. This is the document containing the most rabbinical signatures in the history of the Jews. And they understood that Zionism is, in fact, the affirmation of Judaism. And all one has to do is read Deuteronomy to find out all the violence. In fact, I think it was David Ben-Gurion that said the Bible is our mandate. And now we have Netanyahu quoting the Bible saying, kill Amalek. There's and I disagree with John. I don't believe that there's this elite that's running the Jewish state. Every Jewish person who understands that their religion teaches them chosenness, that their religion teaches them us versus them. They are not going to be welcomed in a society where they have a faith that the past holiday was Passover. And the name of Passover is given because the angel of death, imagine that, having an angel of death came down to smite firstborn children. And the Jews put lamb's blood on their doorposts so that the angel of death would pass over the Jewish homes and kill Egyptian babies. And we see it acting out right now. Isn't 92% of the fatalities in Gaza women and children? I mean, they're not winning the war against Hamas. They're not touching Hamas. They're just slaughtering humanity. And from the top down, from the wealthy to the poor, everybody is playing a part, either through their silent complicity or their active complicity. And my time is up, and so I will cede the floor.
Hey, we're gonna go to Tom Rodman, but I want to observe that Diane Perlman is with us tonight, and she and I were on a Green Renaissance show program, a meeting, and we had a discussion about this topic. And what you're describing, Henry, is a kind of getting into a psychological psychodrama, perspective that feeds behavior. So maybe at some point I'll welcome Diane to just kind of make some remarks here. We're going to go to Tom, and then we'll go back to Diane if you would. Tom, I'm going to put the spotlight on you.
All right. You can hear? Okay.
We got you.
Okay. Yeah, two things. I happened upon this podcast. It turns out it's a film, and it's called, I think it's Israelismfilm.com. I put it into the chat. You're going to have to probably find it there. And it was a real eye-opener for me. Essentially the idea that young kids, like, for example, in New York State, young Jewish, like 8th graders and up, they're encultured. And that's what Bonnie, I don't know if it's from the Truth Group, she promised that she would try to listen to it, but she had she knew what it's about. And it's the testimonies of these young people varying from, I'm guessing, like 15 to 24. And the older ones are waking up, but the younger ones were just fully indoctrinated with all these tropes that I think we've heard, but I didn't realize that the young Jews were so indoctrinated. So if you just
indoctrinated to express what exactly, Tom?
Okay, to believe that it was absolutely their right to be, for Jews to be in Israel, that Israel was basically just open land, never occupied by Palestinians. Just ridiculously naive viewpoints. And I was at the Occupy in Milwaukee, not Occupy, but the encampment, and there was a young engineering student, and he was just saying, this goes totally against everything I was brought up to believe. And he was like practically crying. And I didn't have the perspective. The second thing is this AI. AI is used, Project Lavender, and they have a kill list of 37,000 males. And the AI is known to have a 10% error rate. So meaning that 10% is 100% just random, innocent people that are getting killed. So this is this is out in the open now. We're accepting that. There's no vetting there's almost no, the only check that they do is determine if it's male or female. If it's a female by mistake, then this is what I was told. I put that podcast in there. It's Congressional Dish. That's all I have.
So you're saying that the battleground in Gaza is testing out AI and new weaponry. Is that what you're getting at, Tom?
Well, yeah, and the fact that there's no human intervention, it's just automated. And so these are individual targets, and the AI, presumably these drones, I think someone here could correct me, but I think the drones can just be tasked with going after somebody, an individual.
Well, this is a whole nother layer of what's happening in Gaza the deployment of high tech, of military, the whole expression of this war is, it almost like throws the whole safety argument out the window, and that's what young people are responding to, is the sheer, disproportionate response to this. So Diane, you have, I'm interested in the problem of the great big divide between Palestinian and Israeli, and the trauma that you've talked about, that Israelis have effectively, generation by generation, are a traumatized kind of people living in perhaps a state of kind of war readiness. How does, that's quite a task to break through that and find some way forward that that dignifies everyone. Diane, what are your thoughts
Well,
on?
I just want to apologize because I can't participate actively tonight because I'm in the middle of dealing with a lot of things and I'm going to go on the phone. But I just want to make one comment about before that there are times when Jews and Muslims lived together in peace, and also in Spain and Morocco and in Israel before that. It's just when they started to dispossess the Palestinians. But yeah, there are a lot of stories of, people living together and their families and helping each other on each of their holidays. And so it's not, it's more when they're manipulated. But I apologize. I hope to participate more in the future, but
Well, I really enjoyed being.
Thanks, me too.
We went pretty deep last night, and I'm glad you're here to continue this, to reflect and listen. And so that's fine. Just come and go.
Sorry.
If you have an insight, please share.
Okay. All right. I'm going to be going out and listening on my phone.
All right, Diane. Okay. Thank you. Nita, I'm going to put the spotlight on you.
Yeah, my hands up thing stopped working when we had that interruption on Wednesday. I wanted to say that I was a volunteer on a kibbutz in Israel in 68, 69 for 9 months. And I wanted to confirm that, they don't care about Jews. When I was there, I'm not Jewish, and I was incorporated into a group of Jewish young Jewish people. And they were sending us down to work it was in October, and they were sending us down to work in the banana fields, because what we were doing was we were putting paper bags over the bananas so that they wouldn't freeze before they got cut. And this was right next to the border. And so this was like just a month after I got there. And the first thing I noticed when they sent us down there, the first week, I saw a Mirage jet fly over and drop a bomb on a village that was just on the other side of the border. We were about 500 yards from this village. It was close enough so you really couldn't see the people. I said, what is that? And they said, oh, don't worry, it's just napalm. And I said, well, we do it every week, And I said, yeah, but they're women and children. And they said, yeah, but the children grow up to be terrorists. It's like, it's okay. And every week I watch this Mirage plane fly over and drop napalm on that village. And, they told me it was napalm. But anyway, they sent us down. One day they sent us down to the banana fields right next to the border we were right where the Golan Heights come together with Jordan. And we were being told that there were a lot of attacks by the Palestinians across the borders on the kibbutzim and so on. And we were sleeping in bomb shelters 2 or 3 nights a week because they were sending mortars and Katyusha rockets and so on. But we were a settlement of 700 people, but they never hit the kibbutz. They always hit before the kibbutz or after. So I finally figured out, this is the Israelis that are shelling us. It's not the Palestinians. I mean, they wouldn't miss, And of course, the Israelis would say, the cyber would say, oh, the Palestinians are so stupid they can't hit us. It's like because they don't know how to use these weapons. And I grew up in Mexico, and I know that people especially with no education, do know how to use everything. They can fix cars with tin cans and so on. So anyway, they sent us down this one day in October, and always I think it was either 6 or 8. Girls, and the rest of the people in this group were Jewish, and there was one girl that was her parents had converted to Christianity, and so she was Christian. So it was either 6 or 8. So we were working in pairs, putting paper bags on the bananas, and the supervisor came down with us, and he always stayed with us. And this day, Avishai was his name. He said, I'm not staying with you, but he said, and if the Palestinians start shooting at you, there's a trench over there. Go hide in the trench and wait for the military to come and take you out. So, here we are. And and all of a sudden, there was this explosion in front of me. And I looked up, and my partner, it didn't have a leg. And she was laughing hysterically, and there was no blood because it was sort of cauterized. And it was just, a couple of yards in front of me. Well, we had already heard, where there's one landmine, there's more than one. So when you walk out, you either wait for the military or you walk out in the footsteps that came in. So I just waited, and so they came down, the military got us out of there. And I had a boyfriend on the kibbutz by this time. And he came running up to me and he said, "Oh, thank God it wasn't you." He said, "I worried all morning that it would be you." And I said, "What do you mean? You knew?" He said, "Oh yeah, we knew there was a landmine down there because we caught 3 Palestinian guerrilla fighters and we only found 2 landmines." Well, who knows if that was true. And he said, so we knew there was a landmine and we couldn't find it with the metal detector because it was just TNT and a quarter of a pound of TNT and a very, very small piece of metal, he explained to me. He already knew this. And so, I said, "Well, why didn't you tell me?" And he said, "Well, because you wouldn't have gone to work." And I said, "Well, of course I wouldn't have, if I'd known there was a landmine." And he said, "Well, we didn't want to lose the batteries." And, it could have been any of the other girls who were all Jewish. And they didn't care. Well, they received, apparently it was written up in the New York Times, and so they received $1.5 million donation because it was an American girl who stepped on a landmine. And they had a celebration on the kibbutz. I mean, it's like they celebrated, and they were saying, this is terrific because if it had been one of us, we wouldn't have gotten any donations. I mean, they were just very open about it. And the girl that happened to step on the landmine was the one whose family had converted to Christianity, and her mother came over and she said, "Oh, we'd converted to Christianity to get away from all of this kind of stuff." But anyway, my point is that they don't care about Jews either. And we saw that in 9/11 too. I mean, it's like they didn't care about Cantor Fitzgerald or anything. I mean, all of the Jewish trading companies in there were warned not to go work that day and so on. So I agree that they really don't care about their own people, the leadership.
Okay.
Thank you for
Nita,
sharing.
thank you for that history and your direct experience. Claudio has his hand up.
Oh, hi. I just got a comment. It wasn't a comment, it was a message from Mario. He says that my positive comments, he made multiple comments on the event from the other day, the video, and he says he's being shadow banned because he went back to rewatch the video. It was that good, and he says, "Where's my comments?" He said, and so he says, but don't be surprised if the negative comments are shown. So if you're getting positive comments and they're being shadow banned, and all you see are negative comments, it's a possibility that. Wasn't there a Zionist that was like on the board of YouTube
Sabotage.
and Google?
What was that question? I was saying sabotage, as you mentioned the board.
Yeah, regarding positive comments on the video from the other day. That positive comments are being shadow banned, and but the negative comments are probably going to be shown.
The comment I shared with you was posted at YouTube. And I don't know where this Mario was trying to get postings, comments made. Whether
he made comments on the events from the other day.
Yeah, on which channel?
He watched the whole presentation on the top YouTube channel, and so anyway. But he said, but don't be surprised if negative comments are shown. And so I just want to let you know that. The other thing I want to say is that, when 9/11 happened, before 9/11 happened, I grew up in downtown Brooklyn. And we had Muslims, we had Jews, we had everybody. You had whites, blacks, and we all got along. We were our neighbors, And when 9/11 happened, all of a sudden the Muslims were being being targets. And we were like, whoa, but what was weird to us that that knew these Muslims is that they were so cool. They were so nice. We did business with them. We were neighbors with them. We shoveled each other's snow and stuff like that because they lived right next door, some of them, And then so I says, I got to get involved. I got to do something as an American, And so then I stepped up and I says, okay, I got to get political. Because the people in power are the ones who are making decisions, right? So then I saw division there also, because the Muslim blaming it on Muslims was like dividing our neighborhood. And then when I became active in the political scene, I saw Democrats and conservatives, and I says, you know, and I wanted to register to vote, but I chose neither because I said that's part of the problem. You know, we're human beings and we want to solve a problem and so on. I says, you know, and then, you know, so then eventually I wake up regarding the reality of 9/11. And then I see division there too. We're being divided. It's like what's happening in Israel. You know, you got to divide the people. You got to, that's how you conquer them. You know, you have a boogeyman, you know, the left versus the right, you know, and so on. But that's how you control the population, and you make them chaotic as possible, but the powers that be thrive on that. They thrive on that division, and that's why, like in I Am the Face of Truth, the campaign that we started years ago, we say if it divides the people, it's a psyop. We really should be getting along. Something like what John's, you know, has been saying. You know, once everybody's facing reality, looking at reality at the same exact time, that it's super obvious. Let me tell you, we're going to kick some bad guy booty. The bad guys are at the top, and they have been manipulating us for, you know, for friggin' what, hundreds and hundreds and maybe thousands of years. But it's about time we unite and kick their ass. And anything that divides us, we need to chuck it. We need to put it on the side and go after them.
Okay, John Spritzler is going to respond.
No, and John is on the money.
Let
me just finish. He's my latest hero. He's a very important man. I'm dying to talk to him. Anyway, that's all I got to say.
All right, thank you, Claudio.
Right,
John, reflection.
So I want to talk about this notion about Jews and the Jewish religion. So let me start with an anecdote. I am the child of Jewish parents on both sides and Jewish ancestors on both sides as far back as I know. But I'm not religious and I don't consider myself to be a Jew, but, you know, that's my background. So when I was working at the Harvard School of Public Health before I retired in 2012, a Jewish woman decided to have an Orthodox Jewish rabbi from Chabad House give a series of luncheons to invite all of us, quote, wayward Jews. In other words, you know, Jews who are no longer in the flock, so to speak. So she asked me to attend, and I said, okay, out of curiosity, because I had never been in the same room with an Orthodox Jew before. So at one of the luncheons, and this is, you know, there's a table with about 12 or 15 of us Jews who had, you know, left the flock, so to speak. The rabbi asked a rhetorical question. He said, why do Jews eat kosher? And then he called on people to try to answer that question. You know, then this was the Harvard School of Public Health. So all the answers were basically the same. You know, the people said, well, you know, back in Bible times, you know, pigs weren't sanitary. It was not as healthy to eat, blah, 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 blah. And he let us all say that. I think I said it too. And he listened to all of us. And then he said, no, you are wrong. The reason Jews eat kosher is because God tells us to eat kosher, period. Well, that surprised me. I'd never encountered fundamentalist religion like that before. So that was an eye-opener. But then what was more of an eye-opener was what followed. Then the rabbi said, but there is another important value in Jews only being allowed to eat kosher. And that is that it makes it almost impossible for a Jewish man to date a non-Jewish woman because, you know, they couldn't go out and eat, et cetera, okay? So that was an eye-opener. And let me explain what the significance of it is. The Jewish religion has been used to prevent solidarity from developing between the ordinary Jewish people and ordinary non-Jewish people. There has always been, from long before Israel and Zionism, a Jewish upper class that controlled the Jewish working class, and that in order to control them, needed to prevent them, the ordinary Jews, from developing fraternal solidarity, friendly relations with the non-Jews. And the Jewish religion is designed to make ordinary Jews have contempt for non-Jews and to treat them as non-human. And Israel Shahak wrote the book about this, which you can all look up if you haven't read it already. Highly recommend it, about the Jewish religion. A great anti-Zionist in Israel.
What's the name of the book, John? I'll find the link.
It's something like 5,000 Years of Jewish Religion or something like that.
Okay,
His
let me
name
take
is
a peek. Thank you.
Shahak. Israel Shahak is his name. And he explains that the Talmud is the main Jewish thing that is all about demonizing non-Jewish people as being subhuman. And in fact, he makes a point that in all of the non-Hebrew translations, it's disguised to hide the fact that the language does this. But a friend of mine was a woman who was a translator of English and Hebrew, and I asked her to go, and she was actually pro-Zionist at the time. She changed later, and I asked her to go to the Talmud in her synagogue and see if what Israel Shahak was saying about it was true, but reading the original, the Hebrew version. And she said, yes, it's true what Israel Shahak was saying. It demonizes and dehumanizes non-Jews. So the purpose of it has been to enable the Jewish upper class to control its own ordinary Jewish working class type people. And but here's the other point, which is that despite the fact that the upper class Jews have been trying to use religion for this purpose, they don't just get away with it. It doesn't just work, perfectly. And the reality is that there is conflict, great conflict between ordinary Jews and the upper class. And for example, during the Holocaust, the British rabbi organized a bill in Parliament to make the Commonwealth a haven for Jews fleeing from the Nazis. And it was on the verge of passing when guess what? The Zionists opposed it. And when the Zionists came out against it, then people in the parliament said, well, if the Jews aren't for it, I'm not going to vote for it either. And the reason the Zionists opposed it is because the rescued Jews were not going to be sent to Palestine, where they would be a Jewish working class for these Zionist leaders to get rich off of. And same thing all during the Holocaust. The Jews in Czechoslovakia were asking for money to bribe Nazi guards to escape, and the reply came from the Zionist headquarters that no, we're not going to send it because we need dead Jews so that after the war we'll have standing at the peace conference to decide that we're going to get Palestine. And it goes on and on and on. In 2011, the Jewish population rose up against the Jewish ruling class. And unless you're going to say that didn't really happen, you can't deny that there's a fundamental conflict between ordinary Jews and the Jewish rulers who rule over them.
Thank you, John. Let's go to Nita and then Felipe. I'm going to put the spotlight on you.
I just wanted to add that, I said I suspected that it was not the Palestinians who were shelling the kibbutz while I was over there. And when I got back, I got to know an Israeli lawyer who represented the Israeli government. And he was a former IDF and working in intelligence. And I told him the story, and he confirmed it. And he said, yes, he said, I was part of the unit. I was in the unit. And he said that we attacked all of them on the border to make it look like it was the Palestinians. So I just wanted to add that.
Felipe. Unmute.
Yeah, just real quick, in terms of what John said, I think I agree with that. That's exactly what I see in the Bible, how the Jewish leaders will emphasize and enforce not sitting to eat with what's called the Gentiles, the non-Jewish, and Christianity didn't have a name, so you didn't have Christians up until the Acts of the Apostles, number 11. So, but all throughout after Jesus' time with the Bible, that's exactly what they did. They segregated, they divided the Jews, isolated the Jews, not just with what they eat, but Jews were not supposed to preach the word of God to non-Jewish people. They were only allowed, the word of God, including Christians, were only allowed to preach it to Jews. And for the first time in Apostles the 11th, that's when non-Jewish people started hearing the word of God. And that caused a whole, calamity among the Jewish leaders. So the persecution emphasized starting that point. And then at some point, maybe not now, but at some point, I'd like to see if we can talk about all these protests throughout the United States and Europe for Palestine, because I think it's part of the scam. It's not exactly what we believe it is. So I'm not saying that we have to switch subject now, but maybe at some point we can discuss that.
Well, let me just jump in and say this is Campfire. We can jump around and if you had a thought on the protests, there's been, and the protests are interesting, and we've talked on other groups about it, and people should share. The one thing that's remarkable is how strong the authorities have come down on the protesters. And there was the case in LA where the police actually let thugs beat up and attack for a good 2 hours, from 1 a.m. to 3 in the morning. This was at UCLA, and it was in the New York Times. So, but what's of interest to me is expanding protests from just ceasefire and divest into a strong criticism of our military-industrial complex, which my little litany is, Eisenhower warned us, Kennedy heeded the warning, and it cost him his life. And then there was all those subsequent assassinations in the 60s, and those qualify as a kind of a coup by the military, the plutocrats, however you want to think about it. And we're being haunted by their accomplishment. And the trauma of all of that has been played out with 9/11, got played out with COVID again. Then we've got COVID changed into Ukraine war, and now we have Gaza. And I think the country and the people are effectively kind of subdued and controlled. And that's certainly the case that John's pointing out. The Israelis protesting in 2011, and there was a terrorist event or something that distracted them and gave the authorities, there was a call down to go to war, basically, and pulled people off of their protest and into their national unity to a fight, the boogeyman. So Tom Rodman has his hand up. Let's go to Ron Avery, and then Trina, and then Tom. Ronald, lift your mute, and then please share. I'll put the spotlight on you.
Okay.
We hear you. Go for it, Ronald.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah.
Do you hear the air conditioner in the background too loud?
No, it's okay. Don't hear it.
Okay. It's pretty loud in here.
You're great, Ron. Great to see you.
Good to see you. Yes. Did you change your last name?
I want to say hello to Ron also. How you doing, Ron?
Hey, who's talking?
It's Claudio. It's been a while.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good to see you and hear from you too. Yeah. There's many ways of approaching all of this, and I've kind of selected the way that that's closest to me, that relates to me and what I know. And that is, I see a major component in this is Christianity. The New Testament makes clear some points that that shows that modern Christianity has fallen away. It has fallen away from the gospel, from the good news. And what was the good news? The good news was of the kingdom. Jesus Christ actually brought the kingdom of God to heaven, brought it to earth. So as of 2,000 years ago and more, the kingdom of heaven on earth has been established through and by the death and resurrection and ascension of Christ Jesus, in which we all participate. Now, the modern church, however, they call themselves evangelicals, so many of them, but they have nothing to be angelical about, because they have no gospel, because they don't actually believe the kingdom of God or the kingdom of heaven has been established on earth through Christ. In other words, they deny the works of Christ. They don't deny his death, resurrection, and ascension. They just deny the effect of it. Neither do they participate in it. They wouldn't imagine that they could participate in the ascension, even though they can. And so they deny the kingdom. The result of that is these people that call themselves Jews are really not Jews, because the term Jew is synonymous with the children of Abraham, being a seed of Abraham. The problem with that in the New Testament that poses a problem to these people that call themselves Jews is that there's only one seed of Abraham. There's not multiple seeds. There's only one. And that's Jesus Christ. He is the seed. And if you don't believe it, that's Galatians 3:16. There's only one seed of Abraham, and that's Christ Jesus. So, and that's why Christ was saying he knows those people that call themselves Jews but are not, are liars, and are the synagogue of Satan. So, but the church refuses to preach the kingdom, to get in it or preach it or teach it. And this is why they are so unified with Israel and the synagogues. I don't like to call them Jews, because that is the first grand lie of the whole thing. They're not the seed of Abraham because they deny Christ Jesus. You can't be the seed of Abraham and deny Christ, because you have to be in him and he has to be in you before you are a seed of Abraham. So as you can see, there's some serious theological problems between these people that call themselves Jews but deny Christ and the Christian church that Jesus established in the kingdom of heaven on earth. So my deal is to pick on Christianity to try to get them out of this heresy. They've adopted a heresy called premillennialism, and that is what denies the existence of the kingdom of God on earth, the kingdom of heaven. And they certainly wouldn't say they're in it, and they would deny anybody else access to it because of that. And that's why they are joined at the hip with the state of Israel. And one more thing, and then I'll leave it. And that is that when Christ was talking about when he would return, what would be the sign of it, he said, when the abomination of desolation stands where it should not in the holy place. When you see that, you'll know that my time of return is soon. Well, what is the desolate? Christ told the synagogues before he was crucified that he left their house desolate. Those that did not accept Christ and believe in him, their house was left desolate. And he even said that that's why your nation will be destroyed, because you didn't know the time of your visitation by God in Christ. So he left the house in desolation, but the abomination of desolation is when it stands in the holy place. Well, where's the holy place? It's the church, the body of Christ on earth. So what has happened? The Antichrist state of Israel is being glorified and stands in the center of the church where it should not. Now that's some amazing condition we're in. So that's all I have to say.
Ron, that was a verging on dissertation of theological, religious perspective on history and place and so on. So Nita has her hand up, and Tom is waiting, but let's go to Nita first. I unmute, and I have something I could share with Ron, a reflection on that. Nita, what are you thinking?
Yeah, my reflection is that I think that in a discussion like this, we should not claim that any one religion is the only religion. We need to respect all religions, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, Christians, everything. And it doesn't really serve a purpose to sort of just glorify one of the religions and say that that's the one that's correct. So
thank you, Nita. That's fair. I'll just, before I pass it to Tom, I'm a language arts guy. I read literature. I believe in metaphor, and I listen to you. I'm not a person of faith. I'm not atheist. I'm agnostic, but I have deep reverence for nature, and I value life, so it's the reverential thing. I think atheists can be spiritual in their reverence for life and their commitment to humanitarian and making things beautiful. This is what David Meiswinkle, he kind of alluded to this. He said this explicitly, that as a kind of a North Star, making beauty, making things beautiful. So I hear you, Ron, and it's intriguing, and Nita has a point as well. Let's go to Tom, and then Elizabeth, I think is Stuart. Tom.
Okay. A report maybe from Milwaukee on the Gaza camps. I'm not in Milwaukee. I'm like 60 an hour away right now, but they broke the camp down. They got all their demands met, and they're pretty proud. And that's what, do you remember, that's what was predicted by Gloria. She was very cynical in our other group, the Green Sovereign Rights Movement. I went down there and talked to the students about 4 times. I was also there in February in the cold weather, when they chanted outside the chancellor's office. And I could go through this long litany, but I did put 2 videos in the chat. I think they've got Milwaukee or UWM for University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. The leadership, I think, was pretty amazing. And I was able to talk to them, and I talked to 5 of them got arrested, I think essentially for making noise in the chancellor's office. But it was a wonderful opportunity to network. So I'm kind of an opportunist. I just think it's great that all the students were able to interact with a neighborhood. There's a Jewish synagogue 3 blocks away, but there was no violence. It was all good on a nice piece of grassy land with about 60 tents. So, okay, pass.
Thank you, Tom. Reaching young people is something TAP is committed. We don't know how to do it. We have a few young people, but it's important. And maybe Trina will share the Dale Pierce kind of negative reflection of truth movement later. Trina, just share that out. Let's go to Elizabeth. How do you say your name? How should I address you, Elizabeth?
You can say Elizabeth, or you can call me Betty. Elizabeth is my legal name, but everybody who knows me well calls me Betty. So
you're going to be Betty for me.
Welcome, Betty.
Okay.
Welcome.
Hello, everyone. I'm from Clinton, Iowa, and I find this fascinating. Jeff brought me in, and I know Stone, so I was just gonna say, I wanted to remark on what I believe was what Ron was saying about
yes.
evangelical Christianity. I was in a form of evangelical Christianity growing up, and I can see where he's coming from. You know, they don't believe that the kingdom is at hand. But then I wanted to also agree with the one that spoke after him, which I wasn't paying attention to who she said her name was. But I've come to a certain point of just respecting people.
That was Nita.
Nita, yes. I've come to a point of like getting out of that. I can see like and stepping back from everything and just deciding to be a spiritual person and going, okay, I respect everybody's opinion, helped me on a great level to just kind of see the world as it is and just be comfortable and settled with that opinion. But I can definitely see what Ron was talking about, how it presents a form of a problem to not believe that the kingdom is at hand or it has come. And, you know, I still have family that's involved in the evangelical church that I grew up in. And they still are in that mindset that they haven't achieved that point yet, you know. And I think that that's when everybody starts waking up and seeing that they'll finally get to the point of, oh, okay, you know, they can see everything as it really truly is. So I'm hoping that everybody can. Nice to meet you guys. And I guess I will hand it off to the next guy.
Well,
that's my story, and it's sticking to it.
Well, let's flip it back to Ron. He can respond to what people have said. Ron, go for it. Unmute. Oh, you're muted.
Okay, yes, thank you. I only wanted to make one more comment, and that even though some people might not like to think that that you should approach this issue on a religious plane or from various religions or two different ones, but the fact of the matter is the whole foundation of the modern so-called state of Israel is built on the Old Testament. That is its foundation. That's what they claim is the foundation of their state. Well, the problem is that's no longer in effect. That the New Testament is the testament that's in effect, and the kingdom is not desert real estate. The kingdom is the cosmos and everything in it. And what is happening is these people have rejected the real kingdom, which is the cosmos and everything in it and everybody in it, and want to be exclusive and have this little desert real estate thing. So that's all I'm saying. The only way to deal with an Old Testament religious question is with the New Testament religious answer. So that's all I have to say.
Well, and I'll just jump in and say, you know, I love the ethical, you know, perspective when we ask, well, what would Jesus say? You know, what would Jesus do? And I think Jesus would say everyone needs to, you know, love one another, be respectful, be merciful, be kind, be generous, be, you know, everyone, you know, and this is what John talks about in the egalitarian theory. Is it's born on the golden rule, you know, that we and so on. So I think the struggle we have is to inform consciousness for living reverentially and respectfully on all levels.
However, I will say this, that sometimes you have to be confrontational. Like even this evening, I felt it was slightly confrontational, because to stand for the truth automatically means some things are false. And there are people that stand for falsehood. So it just automatically sometimes means confrontation. But you have to, and that's what Christ, we should ask, what should we do if we're in the kingdom? Because we're now in Christ and Christ is in us. So we're the body of Christ on earth. So we're the Jesuses. and we should do what he would do.
I think for our movement, the story of Jesus kicking over the tables at the temple and castigating is probably the one that we can all settle on, and maybe find a few others. But this is, our movement has to, be receptive to.
Well, here's the other thing. Some people, when I tell them these things, they think this is really bad news. But even Jesus on the cross, when he was being crucified, he said this: "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." So this is where we are. We should forgive these synagoguans, for they know not what they do. But that does not mean we should stand with them and for them. We must show them the truth, pray for them, and that let God deal with them.
Okay, bless your heart. That's
all right. I'm signing off. Thank you all
right,
very
Ron.
much.
Ron, I'll take care.
Thank you, Ron. Good night.
Let's
Good
go
night.
we haven't heard from Joe Michener.
Hey, good evening, everyone.
Yeah, share, please, and then we'll go to Betty and then Claudia.
Yeah, sure. Now, just to speak to what the previous gentleman was saying, that when he quoted, forgive them for they know not what they do, he was referring to the Shabbos Goy. If you're familiar with the term Shabbos Goy, the Shabbos Goy were the useful people who were not Jewish. That was the Romans. There's a belief. It's a Talmudic belief. It's called Tikkun Olam. And the Jewish people believe that it's when the Goyim, meaning you and I and people who are non-Jews, actually recognize the supremacy of the Jewish people and that they are in charge. We live in their system, whether we know it or like it or even realize it. Our monetary system, it's their system. I don't know how many people realize that, but it's biblical. Yeah, we could sit here and go back and forth and say that, well, and I agree, we can't be disrespectful of other people's religions, but we're living in their reality. We're living in their reality because our system here in America of fractional reserve banking is their system. They created it. It's usury system. It's all in the Old Testament. Deuteronomy 23:19 through 20 speaks of, in specific, of how they even only will charge interest to the Goyim and not amongst themselves. And that's how they get super wealthy, and they still do it to this day. Most of what we're seeing now in the world is more of a symptom rather than the cause, because almost everything is about the power control of the monetary system. That's why they're trying to push this central bank digital cryptocurrency. We're already in a type of monetary indentured servitude through taxation with the Federal Reserve. And it's all their system. It's been around for thousands of years, and we've been living in it, and most people don't even realize it. And that's all I got to say. Thanks for letting me speak.
All right, Joe, thanks. Is it Betty and then Michael and Claudio? Betty?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Betty, was that Joe that just spoke, right? Yes.
Yeah,
okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Joe.
I was just gonna say, and I don't know if Ron left already or not.
Yeah, he did. I can pass the message to him, though, if you want to direct message it to me or say it here. I'll forward this section of the video to him and point it out to him if you'd like.
I was just going to say, that's why it's so important right now to respect. That's why I've taken a step back from religion and the evangelical perspective and saw people and respected their beliefs, because everybody has a form of truth that they hold. When we come together, we work that out. We work that truth out together, and everybody has a piece of truth, and that's why we have to respect each other. Because if we're not respecting another person's truth or another person's perspective on what they see to be true, we're not respecting that person. And in essence, we aren't respecting what Jesus taught when he was here. And that's like the underlying thing, you know. The one thing that really got me away from religion was actually reading the Bible cover to cover and seeing how much religion reflected what the Pharisees, you know, taught. And so that to me was my like eye opener. And the final part, the final clincher for me was in Revelation, where it says, "Get out of her." And then they're talking about religion, you know, it's like, says like, oh wow, that's directly, you know, like that's just something that reflected to me. And we can all take a look at the Bible and be like, it says this. Yeah, it does say that, but how does it impact the person? Like, how does it impact you when you read that scripture? Like how, because I mean, like everything you see is somewhat of a reflection of yourself. And so when you look at the Bible, not everybody, they could probably see somebody else in them, or they can see something in themselves that they need to change, or something that somebody else is doing wrong. But I'm like, I've always said that the Bible is not really a gavel, it's a mirror. And if you use a mirror like you use a gavel, you just break it into pieces, you know. And a lot of times people like to take that Bible and they just, you know, there you go, it says this, you know, thump, thump, thump. And that's, you know, I'm liking what I'm hearing in this group, that respect and that understanding, and it's giving us some perspective on what's going on around the world. Because technically, I told Jeff, I don't even like to watch the news because it's too stressful for me to watch. And so this is like informing me of what's going on over in Israel, and at least I have a different perspective. So anyways, that's what I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Betty. Claudio, hands are coming up. Michael is next, and then jump back to Joe.
Thanks, Chuck. I just wanted to say that, you know, the theme I hear over and over again is divide and conquer, dividing the populace, dividing, you know, and you know, when I was a kid, living with my mom, because you know, they used to toss us back and forth between my father and my mother. When I was with my mom, she introduced us to religion. We were in Catholic school. So every Sunday we went to Catholic school. I was an altar boy. I was in the chorus and studied the Bible. We had a Bible class. And I must have been like 11, 12 years old, you know, around that time. And so I had two heroes growing up. Well, around that time, it was Superman, you know, Superman, remember, on TV, and Jesus. Both of them were my heroes. And so, and we were Catholics. And so I said to my mom, because I was always this leader type, I couldn't help it. I had to be, you know, and so I wanted to be a priest, right? And I also love people. I love people. I love dogs. I love animals. I love trees. You know, that's who I am. And I said, so I said to my mom, I said, "Mom, I want to be a priest." She was so happy. She was bragging, you know, all over the place. My son wants to be a priest, you know. And so she told her family, she told her friends, her coworkers, etc. Right? So, but then I started to ask questions. And I said, "Mom, if we're Catholics, why are there Muslims? Why are there Jews? Why are there Hindus? Why?" She couldn't answer my questions. They were basic. I was just a kid. I needed, you know, they were like mystery. I said, why we have different religions? It doesn't make sense to me. So I went to the library. I had my brand new library card, which I was dying to use, by the way. And so I, you know, and I went to the library and I asked the librarian, I says, "I need books on religions." I'm like 11, 12-year-old. I mean, I'm talking like the counter was like up to here. All right. I passed my card over like this, you know. Anyway, so the librarian took me by the hand. She couldn't figure out, she was trying to find something that I can understand. Because I was, you know, I was just in elementary. I was still in like an elementary school. So because that, you know, what I'm asking for is kind of sophisticated, you know. And so what she did, she thought of picture books, like the ones that you put on a coffee table, and so it was the artist, you know, like Michelangelo's art, and so it was based on religion throughout history, you know, and all the masters, you know, the artists throughout history, you know, their works on religion. And so she says, okay, so whatever you don't understand, you know, there's a caption for every image. And so, you know, so you read the caption, whatever you don't understand, look it up in the dictionary. I'm gonna be quick. And so I says, okay, so I took it home and I started to change the pages. I was really excited, and the art was like unbelievable. It's so beautiful, and I love art. Anyway, but I kept seeing a theme over and over and over again. I saw war. I saw atrocity. I saw a man killing man. There was a spear and a horse, and like I said, I loved animals, and that really messed me up. And I saw, children lying dead, in some of these, these paintings. And I said, so I started thinking about it, and I closed the book. I didn't want to see any more. That was enough for me. And then I said, and I thought about it for a while, and I go up to my mom. I said, Ma, I don't want to be religious. I don't want to be a priest. No, that's what I said. I says, I want to get along with the Hindu. I want to get along with the Jew. I want to get along with the Muslim, etc., etc. I says, I want to break. I said something like, I want to sit down on the floor with them and just be like part of who they are. But they all.
Is that your wrap up, Claudio?
But they all are my brothers and my sisters, or something like that. That was
Claudio.
But as upset she was, she understood and she respected my stance. But I still, that's who I am today. And I see this division all over the place, and it's wrong.
Claudio.
Okay.
Claudio, I think you had a Jesus moment. You felt the universality and the common humanity, and you were in with that.
Yeah, he was all about.
I call that having a Jesus moment.
He was all about
as a metaphor.
He was about
Let's hear
love.
from Michael Cook, please.
He was about love.
Michael, come off mute.
He was about understanding. He was about being an example. He was about forgiveness. He was about empathy. And I said, Ma, the money changers, they're back in the temple. And I says, they're holding Bibles, but she says, well, they're holding Bibles and they'll be forgiven. I said, Ma, but they're bad people. You can't believe what they're saying, but they're holding Bibles now. And that's how they're hijacking these evangelists.
That was a criticism, Claudio.
Yeah, it was on the money because it's reality.
Right. Let's go to Michael Cook.
Okay, thank you.
Hey,
hey, Mikey.
Love you. You can't be questioning everything. I mean, Claudio, seriously, if you're questioning everything, you're going to get called on the carpet.
Okay, that's fair. So thank you, Michael. That was a little feedback to not question everything.
Parking and howling, I'm not sure what's going on.
All right. Thank you, Michael. Let's go back to Joe and then Diane.
Yeah, thank you. Has anyone ever questioned why it's been so emphasized that there were 6 million Jews killed in the Holocaust, but we as Americans in World War II sided with the communists as an ally, which was Stalin, who between him and Trotsky and Lenin killed over 50 million ethnic Russians, which many were Orthodox Christians. Has anyone ever wondered why our history doesn't mention a word about that? And it's not emphasized in our history. It's not hardly taught.
So wait, Joe, I'm going to jump in here. So you're just observing that I think 20 million Russians, the huge numbers, the Russians took the biggest hit, as I understand it, in World War II. And but you're saying the 6 million focus on Jews against all the others. What are you saying about that?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm exactly saying that.
I thought you were saying that Stalin, Lenin, and Trotsky killed 50 million Soviet citizens. And Chuck is saying that the Nazis were responsible for approximately 27 million Soviets dying. That's totally different. There's no proof to what you say. There is a lot of speculation, but when the Soviet archives were opened, they found out that the numbers were greatly exaggerated, and most of the people that were in the gulags were actually criminals. Although Stalin did conduct those
That's not
those
from my
trials.
understanding.
Well,
That
there's a lot of there are a lot of different points of view on that. There's no proof.
well, what proof is there that there were 6 million Jews killed in the other than hearsay, what proof is there that there were 6 million Jews killed?
There's plenty of documentation.
Okay, so
Says who?
Joe, let me just observe.
Uh-huh.
Right now, just where we are in the evening, I don't want us to go down to the rabbit hole of comparing and so on, and I think there's a consensus that war is problematic. The World War II, the rise of the Nazi, profoundly problematic, very complicated why it came up, and there's all kinds of theories of what brought these things to about. We don't have time to unpack any of that. I think both from the TAP perspective, the interest here is on building a unity of understanding for possibilities to liberate from the big lies that do create these conditions for this emerging techno-totalitarianism. Diane, what are your thoughts right now? Your hand is up.
I just wanted to correct some things that were said.
Yes.
I was listening and I caught most of it. But first of all, we're talking about the Abrahamic religions, and there are 8 billion people on the planet, and all different religions. So they're people too. Second of all, when Jesus said, and someone may correct me if I'm wrong, when he said they forgive them, they know not what they do, I thought he was talking about the people that were crucifying him, but I could be wrong. And the Shabbos Goy is, if you're an observant Jew, and I don't even think they had Shabbos. There was such a thing in those times. So if you're an observant Jew, you're not allowed to use electricity or turn on the lights on the Sabbath or something. So if you have a neighbor or a friend who's not Jewish, they can turn on the lights for you. So that's what that is. And in terms of money lending, that Christians were not allowed to lend money to each other, or they weren't allowed to charge interest. So the Jews became money lenders because the Christians couldn't lend money to each other. So it put them in a position where they were dealing with money and dealing with each other. And then there was Rothschild, who had 5 sons and were like leading the banks in different countries. So, I mean, it's not, it's not something to be proud of, but it wasn't like Jews only didn't charge interest to Jews, it's much more complicated to that. And I'm not an economist. And Hannah Arendt goes into all this in a lot of detail in the origins of totalitarianism. And tikkun olam means to repair the world. And there's a Kabbalistic idea that when there was a vessel and when the world was created, it was shattered into many pieces, and that in your life, we're supposed to try to repair it and to put the pieces together. So that's what tikkun olam is. And there's a thing in the Talmud that said it's not up to you, incumbent on you to complete the work, but you're not free to desist from it. So everybody has their part to do. So I just wanted to correct those things.
That's a beautiful, unifying theme that we, and I, John advances egalitarianism from each and according from his abilities, her abilities to each according to his or needs, as a foundational kind of human right, condition of life, and so on. And that's what I think is interesting, is when we can start articulating the positive possibilities that I think we could probably have consensus for, and then put that out front. That's our tip of the spear that we take into all of our criticism and call for everything is tending toward we need to build a movement. Joe, your hand is up. What are your thoughts?
No, let's go with Jeff, please, first.
Oh, I don't see yet. Please.
Yeah, Jeff's in line first.
I
had asked him if he made a comment about what Claudia spoke to. So I asked him if he would be comfortable sharing. So he's up. And I believe if he's the right person I'm thinking of, he's friends with Betty that just had to leave, as well as Stone, our friend Stone Hobbit. So is that the same Jeff? Could you come off mute? Thank you for
I thank you, Trina. I am the same person.
Thank you for participating tonight. I'll give you the floor.
Thank you. Stone had originally invited me, and Betty was taking interest in what I was getting ready to do a little before 8 New York time. And I said, hey, why don't you come on in? I just loved the way Betty went about it when she came in, just coming right through, coming in. So the reason I came this way, the reason I accepted your offer to speak, okay, now, I'm usually very, very quiet about these issues because everybody gets so frantic about it, so violent, so very much into arguing their point of view. In my case, I've been following these events more or less since the generation after it started. When I first started listening to everybody talking, there was a fellow who was an emerging leader in Israel who I found very impressive on my grandfather's black and white TV. His name was Netanyahu. At the time, he was just getting started on his career in politics. And I just found it very impressive listening to him. Since more recently, a great deal has changed, including him. Now, the thing that has always impressed upon me is in my background, I came from a very Zionist family. Everybody I knew was like, if you're not extremely pro-Israel, there's really no point in listening to you. So I never talked, because everybody I knew was very pro-Israel. Now, the problem is, if the people are not willing to listen to each other, respect each other's opinions, take in what each other is saying, if it's all got to be about that person who's speaking is the only one who knows anything, the only one who's right, the only one who has a right to speak, if it's handled that way, which I've seen happen many times over the decades, it doesn't lend to any discourse or dialogue that promotes anything except a particular point of view. And people have their very strong, passionate points of view, usually armed to the hilt with their facts. But the facts are only worth something if they're part of a discourse. If you are here to argue, I'm right, you're wrong, which is usually the basic premise, is there a discussion, or is there simply it's my platform, listen to me, I don't want to hear otherwise? I'm talking about something I've been hearing ever since I was a kid. That's what everybody does, for the most part. So is there any premise that there's more than one point of view? When I was growing up, one thing that was very, very clear to me, like I said, in a very, very pro-Israel family, that there was a group who was told, you have no place to live, you have no homeland, get out. But where are they going to go? The folks who were Palestinian, who were there before anything got established by the United States and Israel. So the folks, I would never suggest anybody, the folks who were established in the state of Israel didn't need a place to live, didn't need a homeland. Sure they did. But it was always done with the understanding that the folks who were already there and established didn't have a right to be there, didn't have a right to exist. So they then in turn said, hey, Israel, you don't think that we have a right to exist? You don't. And that was in the Palestinian charter in those days. So I literally saw it in their charter on 60 Minutes. So I'm like, okay, Palestinians are saying Israel doesn't have a right to exist. Israelites are clearly saying Palestinians don't have a right to exist. How is anything supposed to get accomplished or solved? Well, the fact is, nothing did. Even now, it still doesn't get it. Nothing gets resolved, ever. So nowadays, the Israelis are in a power move. Bomb the hell out of the Gaza Strip. Bomb the hell out of anybody living there. everybody apparently is a terrorist nowadays. Everybody. You're bombing. If you're going to bomb kids in a hospital, if you're going to bomb kids in a school, if you're going to take out the injured, obviously everybody's a terrorist. So if you justify that, because that's what they do, they justify it. They say, hey, they're terrorists. So if everybody's a terrorist, then apparently nobody isn't if they're Palestinian. And apparently nobody in the Israeli side is, apparently, because that's the argument. Hey, they're the ones defending themselves. So I've been hearing, this is what I've been hearing over and over again forever, that one side's right, the other side's wrong, and the one who's right is the one in power. So how do you resolve anything? The first step is to grant that you may not be right, that you may not be the only one who lives, that you may not be the only one whose thoughts are sacred, may not be the only one who deserves to live. How do you get there? Well, so far, there's apparently no answer because nobody's able to get there. So I just wanted to offer a very different kind of perspective, apparently a pretty radical one, since I was a kid, it's always been considered radical, that the only way you can really get to peace, to people being able to get along, is that you want to get along and respect each other. If that is not a possibility, how are you going to get there?
Right.
And I know you got everybody's arm with their facts as to why they're right.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
So Jeff basically said there has to be an acceptance that we're going to get along. Is that what you kind of said, Jeff?
Oh, I'm absolutely saying that if you're with your neighbor across the street and the two of you don't see eye to eye on something, and you just cannot acknowledge each other's right to live, right to exist, right to hold the beliefs that you have, and the right to whatever else is going on in your minds, if you cannot get on the same page at all about anything, how are the two of you ever going to get along? So that goes just as well with your next door neighbor potentially, or your friend down the road, as it does between the Israelis and the folks in the Gaza Strip.
Or an employer or a friend. Yeah.
Or
an employer or a friend. It comes into play in all of our relationships.
It goes for
Jeff, let me just, I'm going to peel off you guys, and you guys keep going. Trina's running the show. But there's a fundamental pragmatism for what you're saying. And part of what we need to be reverential about is that appreciation of these differences. And we need to then, I think our peace movement has to explicitly set as a predicate that everyone will get along. And if you don't know how to get along, well, we'll teach you. We'll run a public health program on how to get along and not, want to kill each other. And this is, I think, the criticism of tonight is that Zionism has been about creating the boogeyman, the other, and building from that, creating the problem we have right now. So
Chuck, close us out.
Okay,
I'll stop we'll stop the record. Close us out officially. Then I'll stop the recording. Then I'll stop the live stream, and then we'll do our after chat.
Okay, I'll
invite everybody to stay after the recording and the live stream ends. But go ahead and end us formally. Okay.
Let me just say that. Okay, so this has been a great evening, and one of the things that TAP values is the possibilities for dialogue, real debate, exploration, and
stock market got blown up last year.
Could I interrupt you?
Creative synthesis. So we're going to end our recording right now. Go ahead and end it. Thank you very much, Trina.